If you prioritize everything, you're actually prioritizing nothing. Choosing the right initiatives to fund is a critical part of successful R&D. In this video, we'll discuss project prioritization and provide some examples of best practices with the help of the Enrich Analytics Platform. The simplest definition of prioritization is sorting by desirability. Effective prioritization will help ensure that your teams work on first things first. But what do you prioritize by? There are two types of prioritization criteria. You can prioritize by value, where you choose a metric and rank projects by that metric. Metrics can be qualitative, like a score from 1 to 10 on fit with company strategy, or quantitative, like net present value of future cash flows. You can also prioritize by productivity or bang for the buck. Productivity is just a fancy way of saying you want to consider cost as well as benefit as you rank. You'll divide each project's benefit by its cost, usually the remaining cost to launch the product into the market. Let's look at prioritizing by value first. It is as simple as sorting by a metric, such as ENPV, peak sales, or total score. But the most valuable projects at the top of the list may or may not be affordable. In fact, they could swallow much of our budget, leaving little for other initiatives. This is where productivity, also known as bang for the buck, comes in. We'll define a productivity metric of ENPV over cost to launch. Now we can pull the productivity ratio directly into our report. And we can sort by that. You can clearly see the relationship between value, cost, and productivity. The projects at the top of the report have high value and low cost, followed by those projects with relatively high value and some cost, until we're at the bottom of the report with those projects with low value and relatively high cost. The frontier chart provides another view of bang for the buck, sorting projects in descending order using this metric, ENPV over cost to launch, and then plotting these projects cumulatively, with each project adding its incremental benefit to the y-axis and incremental cost to the x-axis. Notice how the projects that are plotted first, on the left, add more value and less cost, resulting in a steeper curve, and successive projects progressively add less value and more cost, so that the curve levels off. We'll change the bottom axis to accumulate current year cost, rather than cost to launch, because we care more about next year's budget rather than cost to launch when we're making portfolio decisions today. You can then find your current budget on the x-axis and fund everything to the left, because those are the most productive projects. In this example, funding the 10 most productive projects will keep us under $100 million for current spending. So prioritization like this is seductively easy. In fact, it's too easy. Ranking and yanking won't build a balanced portfolio, one that meets a set of competing objectives. We need to move beyond simple ranking, which is part of the answer, and consider all of the strategic objectives. So, what is an objective? An objective is a combination of a target and a context for that target, which we often call a bucket. You can have revenue targets or revenue growth targets or R&D spend targets. Buckets give these targets context. Grow revenue in a specific division or for a certain technology platform or in the medium term. Now, let's revisit the frontier in the context of some objectives. We've built a dashboard with the frontier as well as a spend breakdown by division, a spend breakdown by phase, and expected revenue versus our revenue target over time. If we fund the most productive projects to meet our $100 million budget and defund all of those to the right of that $100 million line, we see we have about $30 million left over. The next most productive project sends us over our $100 million budget. But the one after that meets our budget guideline exactly. So what have we done across our competing objectives? By division, we can see that we've defunded all of our central nervous system, or CNS, projects, as well as our immunology projects. Is this aligned with our strategic spending plan? Probably not. Looking by phase, we've also defunded our earlier stage projects, phase 1, and our phase 2 projects. Probably also not what we intended. Finally, we can see we're not meeting our long-term revenue goals, which is unsurprising since we defunded so many early phase projects. So what can we do? Well, let's group our projects by phase. And let's sort by productivity ratio. Just as we saw on the dashboard, we've defunded all of our early stage projects, except for one phase 2 project here. We can add back in the most productive of our early phase projects in preclinical, in phase 1, and in phase 2. To avoid breaking the bank, we can defer some of the less productive projects in phase 3. Opening up the dashboard again, you can see we've added many of the next cluster of productive projects to our portfolio. We've also balanced out our spending across therapeutic areas as well as across our phases. And we're coming closer to meeting our revenue goals in the later years of our life cycle. Now it's up to the executive team to decide whether the additional R&D spending is justified. So we believe that prioritization can be a really useful method for creating a high-value portfolio, but it's only one of the many tools in an experienced portfolio analyst's toolbox. With the Enrich Analytics Platform, you're certain to have access to the right methods at the right time to ensure the most worthy portfolio is crafted from the available alternatives.